Welcome back to Sunday Vibes 1 and all. We're back in the pub here to answer your burning questions. It's me, it's Chris, and it's Doogie today. Woo! Patrick Van Straten is MIA. Have no clue where the guy is.
Missing.
But Doogie Critchley, well willing.
No, who will the comments be about this week?
I know.
In his absence.
You can slag
week,
off me instead.
they were not happy. So as long as you don't slag Liverpool off too much and say they've been lucky all episode, you should be okay. Right, let's get straight into it then. First question was sent in by Connor Neville, 28. And he says, is the Prem the new Farmers League? Is the Premier League the new Farmers League?
Awful question, great title.
Yeah, it's an awful question, but a good title.
I think Connor is just trying to be provocative. Of course it's not. We've just got a world-class side in it, and they are a lot better than the competition this year through either poor planning from their rivals, poor appointments from their rivals, poor transfers last summer. I think Man City's problems have been basically sorted, or created rather, by their issues last summer in terms of not replacing Vincent Kompany, bringing in Cancelo and getting rid of Danilo, not using that money to reinvest in a centre-back. Man United, arguably, have they got the right man in charge, although there does seem to be a bit of an improvement. Spurs, in disarray in terms of their squad. They still don't have the right backup to Harry Kane. That's been a long-term issue. Arsenal persevered with Unai Emery, never probably should have appointed him. Can't really think of who else in there. Chelsea in a transition after a transfer ban. And I feel people have an issue with the league being so uncompetitive this year, but they're forgetting that Man City won by 19 points 2 years ago ahead of United. And people have a real issue with acknowledging how good Liverpool have been this year. They have the best record of all time in terms of a start in top 5 leagues. 26 wins out of 27, opened up a 22-point gap, and they are a world-class side. They're impossible to bash. And the league is, I think it might not have the competitiveness at the top, but it's certainly got a fantastic race for the Champions League. It's got a fantastic race for the Europa League. Between 11th and 4th or 5th, it's incredibly close. And people are forgetting that 10 years ago we had Aston Villa finishing in 6th. We had Bolton up at the top of the table. We had Everton.
2 vintage sides. You put some respect on their name.
But come on, they're not comparable to a Wolves now with the amount of money that's being spent in these squads.
Yeah.
And Everton finished 4th in 2004-05, I saw the other day, and they conceded more goals than they scored. So the general quality, I think, is higher than it's ever been in the Premier League, and the general quality of managers has been higher. But what's happened with Liverpool is you've had the perfect mix of 3 years of squad planning, players ageing at the right time, players peaking at the right time, and a fantastic manager. And they shouldn't be bashed for being this far ahead. It doesn't mean that the Premier League is no longer a great league. I've never been totally convinced that it is the best in the world in terms of player quality, but in terms of competitiveness and creating an overall product, it's by far the best in the world. So I think, Connor, this is silly.
Yeah, bizarre question, isn't it? Considering the English teams have 7 clubs in the latter stages of European competition this term. And I think that he tweeted this in because before Manchester City defeated Real Madrid at the Bernabeu yesterday, English clubs hadn't fared very well in the round of 16. Manchester City were the first team to score. So there was a little bit of glee, I think, from English football fans that maybe support clubs outside of that top 6, where it was maybe those clubs aren't quite as good as they put forward. But yeah, absolutely bizarre considering we had the most competitive season probably of all time last year, admittedly another 2-horse race. And it's right what you're saying in that, it's a perfect storm for Liverpool to be top dog, given all the other clubs. I want to throw the injury crisis in there as well across the board, and maybe that points towards these clubs playing too much football, but that's a totally separate issue. I'm sure we could do a one-on-one on that or something. But Liverpool and the FSG have planned to take advantage of situations like this over the last 3, 4, 5 years, starting with the appointment of Damien Comolli, who was recommended by Billy Bean. This analytical, studious, methodic way of thinking has been central to their transfer plans and recruitment for the last 4, 5, 6 years, and they've just been waiting, haven't they, for other teams to go through these cycles, and the Venn diagram has crossed over, and bang, they've struck, and you can't discredit them for being 22 points ahead, and you can't say, this is because they've been, lucky. Maybe they've been lucky with injuries, but most championship winning sides are. And maybe it'd be a little bit closer, had injuries not befallen Manchester City. Fernandinho, Laporte. But even then, I think there'd probably still be 10 points to the good just to pull a figure out of thin air. Like, it probably shouldn't be 22 points, given how good Manchester City have been at various points this season. And a bit unfortunate with expected goals. You look at that sort of that difference, that sway. Manchester City are the unluckiest side in that regard in the league. Liverpool, not so much. They're there or thereabouts, but still, for me, 10 to 12 points, the best team in the league.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think the phrase Farmers League is a bit of a meme phrase, isn't it? It's kind of bandied around. It's thrown a lot of the French clubs, but I think it's almost like a jokey phrase, isn't it? To say, the standard of football amongst some of the smaller teams in the division is absolutely horrific. And I have to say, sometimes in English football, when the small teams, maybe not when they're playing Liverpool, but when I'm watching Aston Villa against, let's say, Tottenham or Chelsea, I'm thinking this is going to be a close game if it's at Villa Park every single time. I look at the lower level sides. Let's say, for instance, two teams that came up this season and are still very much in contention for relegation this season. Let's say Norwich and Villa. Some of those players would potentially start for teams in the top four. Emi Buendia, for instance, who can't get a game at Norwich at the moment, who has been sidelined with Daniel Farke saying, his points per game isn't good enough, doesn't get enough goals for the team, can't get the Norwich team, would probably get into the Manchester United team, would probably get into the Tottenham team, would have a good effort of getting into the Chelsea team, maybe even the Leicester team, who are in third. Same can be said of Jack Grealish, or the fullbacks at Norwich, Max Aarons and Jamal Lewis. Todd Cantwell in the midfield is potentially on the verge of a £30 million move to Liverpool in the summer. So to say it's a Farmers League is a ridiculous statement. Some of the players in the lower level sides are going to get moves to top six teams.
And from like a business perspective, that is only going to continue in terms of those middling clubs or lower clubs keeping hold of their best players. You look back at the Premier League in 1997, you just look at foreign rights, for example. Teams are getting £8 million a year for that deal in the Premier League, from the Premier League central funding. This year, I think 2019, 1.4 billion. Now that's led to clubs earning an average in the Premier League of £135 million per club. And obviously at the top end, that's going to be much, much more. So people think that the Premier League bubble is going to burst, and they're using sort of like Liverpool's excellence and the disarray of the other side. And it has, let's get it right, like to an extent, those clubs could have prepared better for this. Like, they should be in better positions. Chelsea shouldn't be getting smacked around by Bayern Munich at home. But yeah, the excellence of Liverpool, it's a new yardstick, isn't it? And that is not to say that the Premier League bubble is going to burst financially. It looks like it's only just beginning. And I think we're going to see, 5-6 years ago, most of the top tier talent went to La Liga. Do you guys see that being the case moving forward? I mean, Eden Hazard is the most modern representation of that, but I don't see that being the case in 10 years' time.
I still think Real Madrid and Barcelona will have the pull. They'll always have the pull as the top two clubs in world football.
I disagree, man.
But I just think that any Premier League club is always worried about losing their best talent to Real Madrid. I never think that a Real Madrid top tier, like Ronaldo, I never thought he's in danger of coming back to the Prem this season in his prime. Whereas I always think that there's be it Pogba or KDB or Sterling or Aguero, there's always chat that he could go to Real Madrid. Eden Hazard the same, like you just said then. And I think that will probably always be the case, sadly, just because of who Real Madrid are, the history and the stature of that club.
Yeah, that's like a generational thing. But do you not think that young players coming through now, look at Jadon Sancho, for example, like Eden Hazard wanted to play for Zidane because he loves Zidane as a player. And what's Eden Hazard our age, 27, 28?
Yeah.
Look at Jadon Sancho. He wants to return to the Premier League, and he can go anywhere in world football. And no doubt Barcelona could use him, Real Madrid could use him. But do you think that...
I think if those two clubs were on the table, they'd be his first choice.
I really don't think
I'm not
so.
I'm not sure. I can't know what's going on inside his head, but I think the Premier League is much higher up in his expectations than it used to be, at least. I think the probably true test on this is going to be in the next couple of years. If one of those two clubs come in for Salah or Mane, at the top of their game, at Liverpool, smashing the Premier League, could they be tempted away? Because we haven't really seen a Premier League club go for one of Barcelona or Real Madrid's top talents when they've been in their prime. Toni Kroos was very close to joining Man United a few years ago.
I think that was when he was at Bayern, though.
Oh, was that when he was Bayern? Okay, fair enough.
And
Varane has been linked with Man United for every summer ever since the dawn of time.
That for me is just nonsense rumours. Like, I don't ever see a genuine chance of a Real Madrid superstar coming to the Prem. I haven't seen it happen once.
What Real Madrid superstars would these top Premier League teams want at the moment? I've not decided in my head if that's
let's say for instance, maybe a couple of years ago in particular, when Modric was flying, or Varane, like right now, why do they swap Real Madrid for the Prem? Unless it's Liverpool at the moment, why do they come to Man City? Why would Varane swap Real Madrid for Man City?
Obviously, it is cyclical, and we can't get in the players' heads, and a lot of these moves are going to be made with personal agendas. But Liverpool and City, I feel, City obviously transfer ban pending, are the new, like I said, yardstick, and I feel like they're replacing like Barcelona and Real Madrid in terms of players, top players wanting to go there, but that is obviously very dependent on managers rather than culture, rather than pedigree. So it is dependent on them keeping Jurgen Klopp, Pep Guardiola, them staying at the summit of the Premier League. But I'm just saying, managerial talent accompanied with Premier League riches, increasing Premier League riches, like it has unlimited potential, really, is going to mean that the top players gravitate towards those clubs as opposed to.
I think it's
like Barcelona and Real Madrid have big time, haven't they? Like transfer-wise, in the last 5 years, managerial candidates. It's been not so much Real Madrid, Barcelona has been a little bit skew with. They're going to take 2 or 3 years to recover.
Yeah. I think it'll be the next 5 years with the sort of young talents that are coming through, Sancho, Mbappe, Haaland. That is when we'll see who's got the bigger lure, because I can't remember the last time that City bought a genuinely already world-class talent.
Okay, so
I think Mahrez was probably the closest. Bernardo Silva certainly wasn't. Sterling was close to it, but probably not. De Bruyne, I don't think was when he was signed. He was on his way there.
A lot of people wanted these players, though.
A lot of people wanted these players, but I don't think they've ever been in a race, and I don't think Man City have ever won a race. You don't know, over a Barcelona or over a Real Madrid for these players. I still think I'm kind of with Joe. But in the next 5 years, I think it could change.
But if you're Kylian Mbappe, where are you going in the summer? You're going to Real Madrid?
He might.
Liverpool's on the table.
I think if Liverpool on the table and Real Madrid on the table,
but that also coincides
with
Real Madrid being one of the few clubs, probably other than Barcelona, that are still willing to pay silly money for a player. Because Barcelona...
That'll always be the case.
Yeah, so
that's never going to change.
That nuance is that brings extra nuance to it, doesn't it? Like, which clubs are still going to pay these massive fees?
So that's part of Real Madrid's identity. They've spent 22 years gathering that identity, and they're never going to change that. I don't think.
But I suppose they've never had a club from the Premier League, other than Manchester United with Paul Pogba, maybe willing to smash world records because they're running a little bit more professionally. Like Liverpool would probably go in for a player like Wendy if they were relegated, in the same way they went for Robertson. But are you telling me if you're a player right now, if you're Kylian Mbappe and Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool came knocking, it's closed and shut, it'd still go to Real Madrid?
I think if you're Mbappe, you still end up at Madrid. It's just something about Madrid. The pull of Madrid cannot be underestimated. It is the destination to end up if you're a superstar. It is the destination to become the biggest name on the planet. And I know that Liverpool are incredible this season, the best team on the planet, and are having an incredible high. But it's Real Madrid. You just don't say no. I think if you're a footballer, you don't say no.
It's an interesting one, particularly as a French youngster.
Especially if you're not English.
The best player your country's ever had.
Zidane. And I think they brought Zidane back in to
on
probably
the biggest wage
reclaim some of that law, right? Because if you're Mbappe, do you play for a Real Madrid who are stuttering under Lopetegui? Who was the manager beforehand, the club legend? I'm totally forgetting.
Solari.
Solari. Do you want to go and play under Solari? Obviously, this ties back in with the question, doesn't it, in terms of has the Premier League nudged itself in front? Because it has on coefficient in the last 3 years. And the European coefficient is, England is number 1, right? So there's your start. And in the last 3 years, England obviously have excelled in Europe. If they maintain this sort of consistency over the next 5 or 6 years, matching up Champions League money with Premier League rights money, I just think the other leagues are going to struggle.
It is very cyclical, though, isn't it? Like 2005 to 2010 was all England, wasn't it? We were getting 3 teams in the Champions League semi-finals, we were battering everyone. 2010 to I'd say 2015, 16 was all Spain.
Yeah.
Barcelona went on probably the greatest side that's ever lived.
German patch in there as well.
A little bit of German patch, but majority Spain, with Sevilla winning 3 Europa Leagues. We had Atletico Madrid winning Europa Leagues and getting to the finals and playing Madrid. And then I think the managerial talent kind of shifted to the Premier League with your Peps, your Klopps, your Contes. And that was a swinging barometer in terms of football. But it's just something about Madrid. I don't think it matters who's in charge. I think Madrid have the pulling power in world football. And I think maybe because we're English, we think that we can compete for these players.
No, I have no skin in the game really in terms of like being biased towards the top 6. Obviously, being a Celtic fan, but I just think it's an interesting sort of hypothesis. Like it has always obviously been cyclical. You know, you would have gone to Pep's Bayern when he was there. You'd have gone to the sort of vintage Jose Mourinho Real Madrid side. That's when he was kind of in his pomp, and you know, players were attracted to both the club and the calibre of manager. But how long will England's dominance? Like how long will it reign over the other leagues? I think it's in the best position to really like establish a dynasty right now, which is obviously really counteracted to the question.
Pre-Champions League ban for City, I'd agree with that. I think Liverpool and Man City can go toe-to-toe with anyone, but I'm always a bit reluctant to judge a country's success or competitiveness of a league by how well they do in Europe. Because Spurs last year, like, fantastic achievement for getting to a Champions League final, but they were not, I don't think they were even close to being in the top 5 or 6 best teams in Europe last year. Like, they didn't win a Premier League away game from like January to the end of the season. Like, they were in disarray. They went on an incredible run. They had this great story against Ajax, great comeback there, and they deserved to be in the final on the basis of their performance in the Champions League. But you know, we saw Atletico Madrid, who are struggling in La Liga, completely shut down Liverpool, the best team in the world on paper. We saw Man City quite comfortably beat Real Madrid in the end last night at the Bernabeu. Like, I feel like we sometimes take too much importance on these like one-off ties and judge it all on that, when actually you can judge it over a longer period, like we've saying. It seems like the Premier League is entering a period of dominance, but you've got to back it up for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, like it's a big broad stroke, isn't it, to say that like reign of dominance. Obviously, there's going to be things within that disprove that largely general theory, and that's what you want, isn't it? Because you want that variety in football. But I mean, let's take a look at some of the other leagues around there. So Germany's been like fascinating,
domestically
really exciting. Hansi Flick obviously totally unpicked Chelsea in the Champions League, and from 1 down to 5, 6, there's a matter of, you know, singular points separating.
Yeah, from 1 to 5 really, between Bayer Leverkusen and Bayern Munich, there is only 6 points separating.
And there's some phenomenal young managers in there. Like, I think
it's the breeding ground, isn't it? That is the breeding ground for both football talent and managerial talent. Young footballers want to go to Germany now to develop their game, and young coaches want to start in Germany.
So this isn't to do, you know, them a disservice, or like we have to acknowledge the Nagelsmanns of this world, the Roses. Like, Premier League clubs will be circling around for them, and actually Premier League clubs are much more willing to kind of part with the old dogma, aren't they, of recruiting English managers who are deemed a safe pair of hands. We've seen it with Hasenhüttl at Southampton, and the job he's done after being given time and being allowed to ride through that rough patch. And I read an interesting interview this morning with Bordalas, one of the outstanding managers in La Liga this term. We're doing excellently with Tafe, saying he'd love to manage in England someday. He saw that as the ultimate. And I mean, English clubs could probably cherry pick all of these managers from these leagues at the moment.
Yeah, I definitely think in terms of managerial talent, the Premier League is the outstanding league, isn't it? Other than potentially the Bundesliga, which is sort of developing the next gen of manager. But I still like the players that are at these clubs. My issue with the Bundesliga is, and it's not so true in the Premier League, this is one thing you can't level at the Premier League quite so much, is the ability to take key players out of very, very competitive rivals and just cherry pick who you want and when you want them. Looking at like Dortmund have done it for years now and gone and got the likes of Julian Brandt out of there. Bayern have done it to Dortmund, Lewandowski, Hummels, Götze, for instance. The Premier League hasn't happened as much. I know that Man United went and got Maguire, but Leicester made them pay out their absolute arse over the top, 80 mil.
And that's why it's better league-wide, right?
That is better league-wide,
That's why the top clubs are struggling maybe a little bit more because they can't solve their problems in one season.
By just ripping the best player out of a rival team and saying we're having them. Whereas that is still prevalent in the Bundesliga, still happening in Italy. So I think those two leagues struggle with that. And it happens all the time in La Liga. Real Madrid and Barcelona just go, okay, who's the best young talent out there? Yeah, we'll take him, and then we'll just load him out.
Back to the question, you think that actually adds to the Premier League's claim of
definitely adds to the Premier League's claim to being the best league. I think it's much harder to get a player out of the Premier League for a rival club for cheap than it is out of La Liga, where Barcelona and Real Madrid dominate all broadcast revenue, and the lower teams have to accept, we're losing Braithwaite today for 18 million euros. I know that was an extraordinary case, but La Liga were always going to side with Barcelona on that one.
Like really obscure transfer. Was it January or the summer where, I don't know why I keep banging on about Getafe, I'm fascinated by them this season, but one of their defenders, when they're maybe in third, left for Espanyol, Uruguayan defender, I can't quite remember his name, because they doubled his wages like that. And you just think that's just a good representation of like the topsy-turviness of players and recruitment outside, like 4 or 5 teams. And I agree that consistency, or not consistency, that belligerent nature of other clubs in the Premier League in terms of parting with their players is what is going to make this.
It's happened more so recently.
The only example I can think of in the Premier League that have consistently sold to a rival be Arsenal and Man City. Like over the last 10 years, like Nasri, Clichy, Sagna. They obviously lost Van Persie to United as well. Like they have sold to rivals to try and.
But that's more poor footballing. That's more poor contractual planning, in my opinion. A lot of those players ran their contracts
just getting bored in that long period where they didn't win any trophies.
Yeah, a lot of those players ran their contracts down. I think now the Premier League clubs plan so well. A lot of the players are on longer-term contracts. For instance, get Maddison out, it's probably going to be 100. Get Ndidi out, it's going to be 100. Chilwell is going to be 70. And then to go down the leagues, let's say Villa stay up, Grealish is going to be 80, and this is a team that's scraping relegation. If PSG wanted to go and get a team that was 18th in a player out of a team that was 18th in Liga 1, it'd be done tomorrow, 10 million euros.
So that's also because the money is so badly distributed in those leagues. I don't actually know whether it is
that
for
plays
Liga
to the Premier League's advantage.
La Liga, I don't have it off the top of my head, but Barcelona and Real Madrid's share of the revenue made on broadcasting is completely unfair and just creates this system where there will never be a team consistently in the middle of those two, unless, Atletico Madrid have even struggled to break into there consistently and consistently challenge for a title.
That plays to the Premier League's strength.
That's
a big
that's what I'm
strength
saying.
of the Premier League.
So we've obviously covered this in quite general terms. What's your boys like a key metric for, I suppose, let's reword the question, like a league being quality? Is it the quality of players? Because everyone always says that players are technically better in La Liga. Is it the competitiveness of the league, or is it the best teams in that league? Like how high is their ceiling? Because that's
a good question. I think it's got to be a bit of everything. I think you want a couple of outstanding teams, but you want a very competitive race for Champions League, European places, and then the general quality throughout the league to be pretty good. And I think in terms of all those 3 categories, I think the Premier League is still ahead, because I'm pretty confident that Aston Villa would beat a Paderborn, would beat a Espanyol, would be, I can't think of anyone in front, Nîmes or someone. So you're looking at a bit out of all 3. It matters what they do in Europe. Outstanding teams and sort of a good, firm race for European places would be mine.
Yeah.
Because even so, same question to you, but like people saying the Premier League, the chasing pack is as weaker than it's ever been, and obviously we've identified like a series of unique problems, right? But when has the chasing pack been this consistent in European football in Premier League history? Like it's normally been very dependent on Manchester United.
Yeah, I think, and you could level the exact same accusations at other leagues throughout time. Like when Juventus were running away with it by 25 points, you could level the exact same thing when Bayern Munich were running away with it by 15 points, or PSG do every single year by 18 points.
Yeah.
So you could level that accusation of, does that make the rest of Ligue 1 rubbish? Not necessarily, because teams like Lyon and Marseille have still disproven that fact, or Montpellier has suddenly jumped up and disproven that fact. So it doesn't automatically mean because a team's 20 points clear, the rest of the league is shit. It just means that one team is maybe having a totally exceptional season.
And it probably boils down to that, doesn't it? Looking at the complexion of the league. I'm certainly guilty of it. I mean, you watch a lot more European football than me now, but it's looking at the complexion of the league and making those top-line observations based on points. You know,
it's easy to say.
Like
exactly.
Marseille are doing incredibly well to be second this term, aren't they? Villas-Boas has really turned that ship around under tough financial circumstances. Even after Frank McCourt bought the club and we thought that he was going to pump a load of money in, he's having to deal with like losing his best players, and yet they're second. And Lyon, who had largely still had the core of that team that did so well a couple of years ago, capitulating.
And then weirdly, Lyon able to, despite the fact the fans don't like Rudy Garcia, they've fallen out with the players. Memphis Depay snapped his ACL. They're horrific domestically. Go and beat Juventus last night. Does that mean then that Italy is absolute nonsense because the team at top of Serie A are getting boshed about by sixth place? It doesn't mean it. It's just a one-off game.
Basing it on one-off game, or even one-off ties as well. Like football is a game of incidents. Weird things can happen. Better teams can lose to small teams. That's why we love the game. And yes, it changes. I feel like in the Premier League, people are harking back to the times where you could predict the top four every year would be Man United, Arsenal, Chelsea and Liverpool. Then came along Man City, then came along Spurs, and it has become more competitive. And now, with 4 or 5 teams in a sort of transitional year, Liverpool have absolutely stormed the league. And we've got to give the credit where they are an outstanding side. They've reached 2 back-to-back Champions League finals, albeit they didn't have a good game at the Wanda Metropolitano, but I'd be very surprised if they didn't make the semi-finals this year. So, just like, I feel like people are so keen to criticise Liverpool and saying, oh, they're lucky with VAR, they've been lucky on occasion. Of course they've been lucky on occasion. Every great team has luck on their side at points, but they've clearly been the best side this year. They'll probably go down as the best side statistically in Premier League history. Whether you want to debate that is another matter. But they're 6 games away from reaching the unbeaten streak. They'll easily smash 100 points. They're a great side.
It does teams like Getafe, Atalanta, I can't really think, Lazio, a massive disservice when you say like the league's crap now because teams like this are breaking into that like hegemony. That is when you've got to like understand the brilliance of the personnel at that club, so to speak. Like Gasperini, and I've not done that much reading on him. Big fan of him, big fan of the way Atalanta play. But I think if we look back at this period in 10 years' time, it would be like, wow, like what a golden period. How did he do that? What a genius! Like maybe just look into what they're doing a little bit more and put a bit more respect on the name, sort of thing.
Yeah, so there we have it. I hope that answered the question. Overall, I think we can all agree that the Premier League is not a farmers' league, Connor. You need to relax. What do you guys think about the overall quality of the Premier League and how does it compare to the rest of Europe's leagues? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Moving on then to quick fire questions. The first one was sent in by Ahmed. He says, is Alphonso Davies the best left back in the world this season?
He's the fastest thing on 2 legs.
He is.
Obscene.
First time I've ever seen him play actually against Chelsea, and yeah, he was an incredible talent. And obviously, I don't think his future is going to be as a left back. I think he might be as a left winger. And when the boys come back in, Luca Hernandez and Nicolas Sula, Alaba might go to left back, and you might have that situation.
Alaba's been great at centre back though.
Alphonso Davies plays left wing, especially now Kingsley Coman's pulled his hamstring and Lewandowski's out for a month or so. You might see him push a little bit further forward, but he's definitely in the conversation. I'd still go Robertson. I think Robertson is part of the most elite defence in world football. I know that statistically, I think it's still Atletico Madrid, isn't it? But I still think Liverpool's is better, and I do think that what he adds to the team is hard to put into statistics. His pressing and his off-the-ball work and his energy and his leadership. A little bit Jordan Henderson-like, that he's potentially slightly underrated because Trent is so statistically dominant.
It is now. We see that defence as elite now, but they only they only generated 2 clean sheets in the first 15 games, didn't they? So people were saying that was the kind of chink in their armour. Obviously, they've been elite ever since. I think 9 out of the last 10 games have been clean sheets. But this just harks back to the last question. Obviously, don't want to really go into that. But Liverpool they had deficiencies at the start of the season, and that sort of highlights it. So they were there to be got at, which is you got to think. It could have been more competitive, the Premier League, at the start of the season. The greatest Premier League team of all time, arguably, or they will be, had its deficiencies. But anyway, Alphonso Davies, first time I've watched him properly against Chelsea as well, but I think he's probably already in my top 5 left backs.
Yeah, he's got to be in the discussion. I suppose left backs, I think
in world was good.
In world.
I thought Folarin Mendy struggled last night.
No, he's been good. Sorry, I didn't.
In world football, I feel like there's of all the positions in world football, I feel like left back's going through a bit of a there's not that many good left-backs around, or at least elite left-backs around. Like I feel like, particularly in the Premier League, it's quite a low standard of left-backs. And Marcelo's obviously in decline, understandably. Jordi Alba's not played particularly well this year compared to his usual standards. So there's a bit of a gap there, and Alphonso Davies has taken to left-back life like a duck to water, and what a fantastic story. Born in a refugee camp, grew up in Canada, came from nowhere, over to Bayern Munich at 19, playing an unfamiliar position. And people will say, oh, it's easy to be left-back at Bayern. I really don't think it is at times. They do play a very high line, and his pace is extraordinary. His reading the game's really good. He seems like he's got natural instincts to be a defender. So, yeah, on the basis of this season, he's in the top 3, I think.
Great TikTok account as well.
Yeah, great TikTok account. Dave has the next one. Do you think a Premier League All-Star game would be a good idea? Best of Northern clubs versus best of Southern clubs.
It'd be fun, wouldn't it?
I think it'd be an awful idea.
I think it'd be a good, if it was done for charity, it'd be, I can't see the harm in it. But
I just think that the players are playing too much football as it is, way too much football. There's already a competition too many with the Carling, not the Carling Cup, what's it called now? The Carabao Cup. And the winter break was effectively a sham this year. Came a month or 6 weeks too late, and add another fixture to it, and suddenly hamstrings are really popping.
What about if it was instead of the Community Shield? It's just off the top of my head.
I would love that.
At the start of the season, that'd be fun. But although I can't imagine a lot of managers want to put their players in for that.
Yeah, managers pull their players out of international duty, let alone an all-star game.
Yeah.
I think there should be, instead of the League Cup, like a Great British Cup. Celtic
you just want to see Celtic.
But those games would have a lot more drama.
Nobody would care, mate. Only Celtic fans would care.
A much bigger narrative. Every time Celtic draw a British club, it's like dubbed the Battle of Britain. And we've had some great games at Manchester United. I don't know why you're being so dismissive of the idea of slapped you around the
Because they're in the Champions League, those games. This would be effectively a Community Shield with Celtic playing in it. It'd be like a pre-season friendly.
No, not this. Instead of the League Cup, I would have a Great British Cup.
You just want the Battle of Britain montages, video montages pre-game.
I just don't see why that doesn't happen. It's just such a good idea.
Yeah. I'm quite for this game for charity, and it replaced the Community Shield, but I can't see it happening.
Okay, Football Punt says, who we take in Euros if Kane and Rashford injured? Not the best grammar, but Rashford might not play here. Obviously, Solskjaer came out a couple of weeks ago and said,
where's he at? Yeah.
It's touch and go if he plays again this season. If he doesn't play again this season, I don't think Gareth Southgate's going to
you can't take him if he's not playing any football.
Kane, likewise.
Kane will probably be back next week.
Definitely going to be rushed back with that Heung-min Son injury. So I think Kane will go because he gets rushed back and he always ends up being on the plane, doesn't he?
Rashford is the captain. Unfortunately for Rashford, it's probably going to boil down to we take one risk on these two players, and it will probably be Harry Kane.
Okay, and that'd be a good thing for Man United, by the way, because Rashford, nice little summer off, recover. But who goes in instead of Rashford?
Well, I did this on Twitter the other day just for a bit of fun, and I worked out most squads you take 6 forwards. So Sancho and Sterling will definitely go.
Obviously, say Kane goes.
Kane will probably go. I think you take Tammy, Ings,
Sterling,
and I've said Sterling.
Oh, right.
And there's one more space if Rashford in there, and you'll probably look at maybe a Calvert-Lewin as a late shout. But I think you probably want a backup winger. So
I mean, if Southgate's picking on form, Calvert-Lewin has the 3rd or 4th best non-penalty XG per night in the league. His form has been incredible under Ancelotti. Does he have?
Worked with Southgate before?
Is he of the same calibre as the rest of those forwards in that group? Perhaps not, but in the same vein as Danny Ings, his form probably warrants consideration at the very least.
Yeah, for sure. I'd get him in the next squad.
I don't think you take Calvert-Lewin and Ings. I don't think you take Kane.
But they're totally different players, though.
Calvert-Lewin,
Abraham,
Ings, and Abraham.
That's too many. You need another winger.
4 strikers is too many in a group of 6. I think more likely to happen is that he includes Grealish in the forwards. We've seen Grealish play wide on the left quite a lot for Villa at this time throughout the season, and then that allows him another midfield spot.
I feel like we're missing someone obvious on the wings, like Hudson-Odoi, maybe
not
around
the shout.
I mean, James Madison's also played out on the left.
Harvey Barnes. I was thinking Harvey Barnes.
A bit of an outside shot.
Not a bad selection.
I mean,
outside shout there.
Him and Grealish are 2 totally different options on the left, aren't they?
Yeah.
And England, I don't know, Gareth Southgate's last couple formations have been what, 4-3-3?
4-3-3.
Yeah, he's also switched into 3 at the back though. I think he likes the 3 because it allows Harry Maguire to play in a 3, and Maguire's a lot better in a 3.
True.
And most of that ball progression's still coming from the fullbacks, isn't it? Then if it's a 3-4-3.
Yeah.
So would you have Jack Grealish playing out on the left when you've got Ben Chilwell maybe doing like that progression and an extra midfielder in there. I don't know.
Yeah, the main issue I think for England, as it always is, or has been for the last 2 years, is that CDM position and potentially at centre-back as well, centre-back depth.
Do you not think Hendo's just going to play there?
I don't want Henderson as the CDM. I feel like he's so much better when he goes box to box, playing on the right of that, like midfield 3 at Liverpool. I think it should be like Henderson, Rice or Winks. I'm not pleased really about either of them. And then Ox or Maddison as the other one.
Yeah.
So then you have more backup to play Maddison.
But I think out of those midfielders, Henderson's perhaps the only guy, other than if you included Eric Dyer, that could really play as a holding midfielder, and
I think Hendo plays
that can put up good defensive numbers and has good distribution. Like, I don't think who are some of the other names you mentioned there. So like Oxlade-Chamberlain, great as like an 8. Probably for England. Like, I think Hendo's probably the outstanding candidate.
I do as well. I think Hendo will end up playing as a defenseman. I think there's also a bit of a problem at left back. I know that Chilwell's going,
the depth there is not good.
We were talking about Chilwell having sort of £60 million moves. It feels like Chilwell's form's struggling, and there's not much depth.
Aren't they? Is it 1 win in the last 5?
So
last 6 probably.
Our kind of options at left back behind Chilwell, who'll definitely go.
Rose,
we're looking at
Williams, Saka.
Rose. I don't think is going to go. Not at Newcastle.
I think Shaw is either.
I think Saka does sound an outside chance of going to the Euros. Luke Shaw's had a massive upturn in form over the last 3 weeks. He's looked brilliant, but it's been at left centre back. Yeah. Ollie's moved him into the centre back role, and it's worked a treat. I don't see that happening for England.
He's been crucial in some of your games recently, Luke Shaw.
But it does mean that, let's say John Stones, who's having a terrible season, might miss out, and he might just take Luke Shaw as a left back, centre back option. It allows him to have 2 positions covered in one and not have to take the 4th centre half.
Yeah, Saka's going to have to be unreal from now until the selection point, isn't he? But it does pose less of a risk if you're going to play him in a 3-4-3, doesn't it? Because he does have defensive deficiencies. Like, we obviously think he's a wonderful player. But probably he's better going forward than Ben Chilwell, and provides a really sound creative option on that left-hand side. So he's probably the outside bet for me.
What, to go? Bukayo Saka, you're welcome.
Like, as a bit of a wild card on that left-hand side.
Yeah, I think it's a good shout. Okay, let's finish with a personal question then. Firmino's fantasy, best player you've seen live?
Oh, you guys probably have more exciting options.
Apart from Messi? Let's discount Messi.
Let's discount Messi. We saw Messi, didn't we? Scored a hattie against City at the Nou Camp,
which I'm livid about. I wish I was, a bit more with it.
Best player I've seen live.
So Frank Lampard came to the stadium light. He was very good, and Chelsea were a pretty good
Seb Larsson for you, no?
Seb Larsson's a phenomenal player, but not the best player I've seen live, no. One of the best, he was a very good servant for Sunderland. He was never probably the most talented.
Who's the best player for your club?
That I've seen live? It's been pretty bleak. Darren Bent, maybe? Or currently Chris Maguire in League One, absolutely killing it.
The same Chris that played for Sheffield Wednesday?
Yes,
the striker?
Yeah. No, the winger. Different Chris Maguire.
Oh, okay.
I think Cristiano, probably at Man United, or Ryan Giggs. Ryan Giggs, I think.
You guys are so lucky, man.
Yeah, Ryan Giggs, I think, was probably... I only saw Ronaldo a few games, so... wasn't the most exceptional, but Giggs every single time I've watched Giggs play.
You ever seen Nakamura?
Outrageous.
Yes, saw him score against Villarreal, went up to Celtic for a Champions League game. Wasn't the best game. I remember Marcos Senna being outstanding.
Really?
Van Dijk?
Van Dijk just actually struggled to embed himself into the side for the first 10 games, and then after that was unbelievable. Never seen anyone just look like he was breezing his way through that league in the way that Van Dijk did after 6 months. The story came out, I think it was, I don't want to say as a St Mirren forward maybe, that he said he just brushed him off the ball, and Van Dijk went to pick him up and went, "Don't even bother, I'm that good." And he said he didn't get near him for the rest of the game. But live, my first Celtic game was Celtic 3, Aberdeen 2. Craig Bellamy scored still one of the best goals I've ever seen live, and I really, I don't know how old I was at that time, really wanted Celtic to sign Craig Bellamy. Absolutely dismayed they didn't. Stilian Petrov, incredible midfielder.
Did you ever see Larsson live?
No, I did not see Henrik Larsson live. He left the club in 2000.
I can hear the sadness in your voice.
6, 7? Yes. Won Barcelona Champions League, didn't they? At my club, I'd maybe go for, Nakamura, why not?
There we go, eclectic mix. Right, that's the end of this week's episode of Sunday Vibes. If you want to get your question answered next week, send it to us on Twitter. We usually send a tweet out on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, so make sure you turn notifications on or something like that so you don't miss it. What else we got to plug? Anything coming this weekend?
Go and check out Friday's Continental Club. I believe we're discussing whether Sarri deserves the chop at the end of the season. if things don't improve.
Oh, probably does.
Yeah, and stick around for the Football Social, because that will be live as well, won't it?
Yes.
And go and download the Extra Time podcast, of course. Check out the latest Journeyman, and that's probably enough for you.
Yeah, thanks very much for watching. Auf Wiedersehen.